Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. If you would like some additional food, there is a lot of food over here. So please, if it's still here when you leave, help yourself, take some home. Great way to do that. Thanks for being here tonight. Let's stand for the prayer, if you would, please.
Please join me in a moment of prayer. Holy Heavenly God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the rain. We so enjoy the sunshine, but your rains give us better strength and nutrients that we all need, and our plants and our growing vegetables, fruits. Thank you for that. Thank you for this club. Help us to serve not only this community, but the greater community of this world. Lord, help us to be warriors for peace. Sometimes it's really hard to be forgiving. Help us in that, Lord. Help us to be forgiving, help us to be positive, and use our club strengths to be a positive, reinforcing force in our community. Thank you for this food, those that have prepared it. We ask this prayer in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do the four-way test. Is the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Please be seated. Do we have any happy dollars tonight? I'm guessing Cynthia's still scanning, so she must have a happy dollar. By the looks of it, that's more than $1. Well, that's Abe Lincoln. Go ahead, fire away.
For the good of the cause. I wasn't here last week, and I know Jim thanked everybody, and I just want to be sure to thank everybody for all the help you've been giving this for the second Fridays, for the farmers market. They have increased so much in vendors, and I don't know if it's because of the beer wagon down there or what, but we've had so many more people call for the next one also. So it's a good feeling. It's good in the community. Everybody's happy. Everybody's smiling. So just thanks to the Rotary for all your help, because if it wasn't for that, we'd be there all hours of the night putting those tables away. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Sandor? Shonda. Jeez.
I know, I make it. I did a couple of them I already responded, but just last week, actually, well, before the meeting, it was 20 years when I officially decided to move to the country. It's not when I was naturalized. It's 20 years anniversary of me living here. I've spent most of it in Plain Township. Moved here to the community 5 years ago. But we're going to have a party on August 25th. I will send out the link to everybody. We got the email. So if you have time, please come and celebrate. We'll just have some food and friends and live music. All right.
Cool. Thank you. Any other happy dollars?
Randy, can I do a happy dollar?
Yeah, 1 second. We're going to let Bill go first.
Tomorrow, Vivian and I will have been married 66 years.
Wow.
Hi, I'm a guest. I know we're not to that point yet, but I'm Sherry Brown. I used to be the director of the National Public Library, and I have one happy about because I get to hear my friend Brock tonight. And Randy invited me because he knows that I have so much respect for Brock and so much excitement about the Louisville Library. It's the first-rate institution that
Okay, thanks, Sherry.
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't know it gets worse. Then I hear tell that Randy might not have told you all that he won a big award last week. Randy said.
Wow.
I played in the Pan American Games, the tennis, which was held up in Cleveland. There were close to 12,000 athletes from 71 countries. And I made it all the way to the semifinals. I lost to a guy from Serbia who was 6'5" and a little faster than I was, which is pretty unusual. But then I won the third place match game against a dude from Japan, from Osaka. So I ended up with the bronze medal. So that was kind of Anybody else? Happy dollars? Mark, do we have a song? I think I caught him with his mouth full.
That's easy to do. All right, let's, up on our feet, let's sing something that everybody knows. Come on, Jim, it's your favorite Beatles song.
Can't wait.
You haven't heard the Beatles do this, right? It's a grand old flag. On 4, 2, 3, 4. You're a grand old flag, you're a high flying flag, and forever in peace fade away. The emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true for the red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. May old acquaintance be forgot. Keep your eye on the grand old flag.
Thank you, Mark. I still have some rotary pins. If anybody would want one, or 7 or 8 or 12, you can feel free to grab them and take some home. Better you take them home than they sit in my basement for the next 12 months. We have a number of guests tonight. Sherry kind of introduced herself already, so Sherry, thank you for being here. Mr. Dr. Thomas is back there. Rob Johnson, who has applied to be a member, is here. And just so you all know, he's videotaping tonight, so be careful what you do. The 2 young ladies in the back, you want to introduce them? Go ahead.
Okay. This is my daughter, Liza. She made it home. I didn't think I was worth $50. She brought her friend Emma. Emma's from Belgium. That's where she stayed. Everything went great. They missed the connection. Somehow the adult came up with Eliza. She got on a standby flight. She got booked on a secondary flight.
To Florida.
They were going back. And the day they did really well. They're still a little tired, but doing good.
Laura, would you like to introduce your guest?
So this is my county corner across the street neighbor, Scott Kaczynski, and he used to work for Timken, right?
That's right.
Yes. And currently he has some time on his hands, and our host family for the other student who's coming from Belgium is my next door neighbor, and she reminded me that Scott would be a really great person to start getting involved with Rotary. So I texted him, I said, Scott, do you want to come to the meeting with me? And he graciously accepted. So.
First give in, she's not going to.
Formally a lineman. He's formally a lineman for parish. Ooh, look out.
I was also Rotary Student of the Year.
All right.
Give us dues.
Speaking of dues, Danny, have you paid your dues yet?
Nope. I got no email Monday to remind me. No one reminded me. I got here and
Oh, well.
I got mine.
Cool, thank you. Emma and Eliza are going to do our little Rotary moment. You guys have a couple of minutes you can share with us about your trip.
She just sing. Yeah, this will be good.
So recognized us in our blazers and came up, one of them took a picture of us. And it was very nice and comforting to know that there was a Rotary everywhere.
All right, Roseball.
Not yet.
You are a guest. Would you mind selecting a pressure on? Yeah, no pressure at all.
Okay.
Didn't even spill it tonight. I'm happy about that. And the winner may or may not be Jerry Dunbar.
All right.
How many times is that, Jerry?
That's like he mans the tape. Yeah,
It's all over again.
I know.
So Jerry gets a whopping $4.
Oh.
Will that buy a Big Mac or not?
Not today.
Big something. All right. Some new business. We talked a little bit about possibly doing a chili cook-off last week, and Jim Dutter volunteered to help with that project. And anybody else would be interested?
We did this years ago, and Eva cooked it, and she loved it, they had a blast. Her and I did that at East Canton, the Rotary Club was fun.
Okay.
So
Good, you're on the team.
she might be interested. I helped stack the dishes.
You're on the team.
So are you nominating Eva to help with the chili cook-off? Well,
She'll
she's,
appreciate me doing that.
yeah, she will, but I'll just let her know. Anybody else interested in helping with the chili cook-off?
Jim, do you have a date yet?
Huh?
Do you have a date, nothing?
I have a question.
Yes.
Wait, who's sponsoring the chip?
What is it? My first question, was asking the first question.
We haven't got that.
We're just in an exploratory stage. We want to check it out and see if it's something we want to do.
So we're trying to figure out,
Alright.
we gotta get a committee together.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
go from there.
It'll be at your house.
Yeah.
Okay, so far we've got Jim Dutter and Eva has been nominated. If there's anyone else that would like to help with the chili cook-off, that would be great. The pickleball tournament that we talked about possibly having, Shandor, myself, and Brock are going to work on that and look into it. If anybody wants to join us, by all means, please do so.
You're not allowed to play.
The quarterly newsletter that we talked a little bit about last week, Jared, Shive, and Trisha have graciously
I volunteer.
willing to help with that, and Denny is also willing to help with that. If there's anyone else, by all means, please see me, ask, let me know. I talked to the young lady, Miss Fisher, about Louisville Neighbors. I called and spoke with her at length this past week, and she is very interested if we have Rotary articles about the amphitheater or anything else. She will put those into the magazine for us at no charge. They're looking for more details and information about Louisville. I've got a meeting with her actually here coming up in, I think it's August 14th, it's a Wednesday. But she's going to come in at 11 o'clock and talk a little bit about the magazine, what's involved. But again, if we do a newsletter, we can kind of pluck some of those articles out of there and put them in here and get some free publicity. As I've said before, without the Herald, we need to kind of be creative about things, and this would be another avenue for us to get the word out there about the amphitheater and a lot of these other activities. If we do a chili cook-off, a pickleball tournament, whatever it is, good way to kind of make those things known. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Amphitheater update. We had a meeting this afternoon up at the amphitheater, appropriately. And Bill Jeffries from Jeffries was there, gave us a quote for the 520 linear foot trail and the 20 by 20 pad. To all of our surprises, cement is almost the same cost as asphalt these days. So it looks like that 520 foot trail that connects the library property down to the amphitheater to make it ADA accessible and approved We're probably gonna end up with cement as opposed to asphalt. Makes more sense.
That's better. Good deal.
And it's a much better deal, you're absolutely right. Bill was I thought he was very helpful today. Pricing that he's quoting us, he doesn't have a hard, fast quote, but it's definitely gonna be below what we budgeted for. So that's a really good sign. That'll help us with the amphitheater. We also had Andy there from the city. They're gonna put some drainage, two drains, I think he took two drains. Catch basins in the front there to catch all that water that seems to be there almost all the time. And Mark was there, and he's working on the quote for the lighting and some of the security type things. We contacted our architect, Joe, this afternoon. I emailed him, and he emailed me right back with all the answers to our questions, so we can work on that as well. So we're moving well. We have 3 of these out in the Louisville marketplace now. One of these is at the Eagles. Jim Edwards and I met with the Eagles last Friday, and they seemed pretty enthusiastic about the whole project, and they allowed us to put one of those in the lobby. Al's got one at Paradise Church, and we had another one at the Louisville Library. So we're trying to kind of get the momentum going, get everything rolling with that, and it seems to be heading down a good path. We've talked about the program called In Our Nature, which is Elaine's. She's what's her title? District Governor. I always call him the Grand Poobah, but that doesn't sound right. But it is August 11th from 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock up in Youngstown. If you're interested in going, it's a meal, it's dessert. It's I think it's $60 a person. They're having an art auction. Barb's mother-in-law donated art for it. And there's about 40 or 45 different paintings that are there that you can bid on. It's a really nice deal. This is Elaine's big thing. She is very nature-oriented, and she wants to get every Rotary group club in her district to donate at least $1,000. She's asking for $2,500, but I'm asking to grow here, and that didn't happen either. So we'll worry about that later. But again, if you want to go, let me know. I've got all kinds of information. Like every other day, I get something about that.
Randy, I think Eva and I and Trisha might go, and it would be great if we could get like a whole group going, and then we could have a table together. So if anyone's interested, I would love to have a few more people. We can carpool.
Cool, thank you. And a shameless plug for the 100-year anniversary shirts. They are $20. We just ordered these from Brock. Library. Sorry. But at any rate, the turnaround's about 7 days. If you want one of these, let me know what size you want. Give me $20. We'll have it for you in 7 to 10 working days. How's that sound? Does that sound fair? Cool. Anything else that's anybody wants to add as far as new business?
I can, on the milkweed that got mowed down,
Yes.
the city is agreed to buy those plants and replant them, but they're not gonna do it until all of the earth moving is done. Because they don't wanna have it, end up being another casualty.
If you guys haven't been up to Metzger Park lately, we were there for that meeting today, and there is a lot of dirt being moved. I mean, that place, between the 4 baseball fields that they're going to build there, and the library, I mean, you can hardly recognize that southern part of the Metzger Park right now, so it's pretty interesting. Our speaker tonight is Brock Hutchinson, and he's going to talk about the Library of Congress, and he has a video presentation for us, correct?
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of move toward the middle there, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me tonight. I have to tell you, whenever Glenn asked me to do this, I was a little bit taken aback because I'm so used to talking about the new library that I had to practice this. I talk about something that I did like 10 years ago. I'm so used to talking about the new library. So When I was in college, I did an internship program with the Library of Congress. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I'll talk a little bit about the program and what we did while we were there. One of the best experiences we got, so that's my wife, Lindsay. We were boyfriend, girlfriend at the time. Me in the back, and that's John and Annie Glenn. We got to have several dinners with them during this program. It was really awesome. And I'll talk a little bit about how we did that. So I don't know how that got there. That's a picture of the new library. Just thought, work it in. While we're talking about it, donor opportunities are still available. If you see me after. If you haven't donated yet, we'd love to get you on there. We'll recognize you at the new library. Okay, back to this. So why are we here? Why are Lindsay and I in a room with John and Annie Glenn? Lindsay and I were dating at the time, and she said to me, hey, there's this internship program. They take exactly 2 Muskingum students and about a dozen of Ohio State students, and through the John Glenn School of Public Affairs, they send you to Washington, D.C. Why Muskingum and Ohio State? Because John Glenn actually went to Muskingum first and then went to Ohio State. Muskingum, as Barb knows, is the Harvard of the Midwest. Not everybody knows that. And so they would take this group of students and they'd send you to DC. And then once you got the internship, they would actually place you in an organization in Washington, D.C. So Lindsay, at the time, we'd been dating a few months. She's like, hey, you should do this too. She's significantly smarter than I am. And so I thought, well, that relationship was fun. She's going to go off to DC and I'm going to be stuck here because there's no way that I'm going to be able to do this. So of the whole campus, we were the 2 people that got picked to do this, which was pretty crazy. We didn't tell them we were dating. So when we were there, we actually got to have dinner with John and Annie Glenn several times. We invited them to our wedding. We never expected them to come, but we sent them a note and said, here was our affiliation. We had such a great time getting to know you while we were there. And they came to dinners at Muskingum too. So we actually met with them a few times. And so we got this note. We have this in a shadow box at home. There's a letter from John and Annie Glenn that was saying, congratulations on your marriage. And at the time, Bill, 69 years they were married when the time they sent me that letter. So they said, best of luck breaking that record. I think they actually ended up making it to 73 before John passed away. So here we are in DC. I'll talk about the Library of Congress, but it was really a whole experience. We spent a semester there. This picture right here was our dorm room, which we thought was high living at the time. We were in student housing right behind the Supreme Court building. I look at it now and think it looks more like a jail cell, but we thought it was awesome. We're on the lawn of the White House here. We got to see Laura Bush speak at the National Book Festival on the Mall in DC. And then these are some pictures of Lindsay and I in DC, and I put these on here because I wanted you all to see the chiseled jawline that I had in my 20s. I cut this beard off about 3 years ago, and that jawline isn't there anymore, to my surprise. So I had to keep the beard. So here's what working in the actual Library of Congress, what that was like. So this is the big, fancy, ornate reading room. Okay, that's not where I worked. But this is in the Jefferson building of the Library of Congress. So if we actually talk about the institution itself, which is, in fact, is a very interesting history, the Library of Congress began in the halls of Congress in 1800. And then the Jefferson building, which is the building that most people think of when they think of the Library of Congress, was built in 1897. That's the building directly behind the Capitol. And it looks a lot like the Capitol. It's domed. It's built to blend in with the Capitol building. People joked all the time that if you looked at the Library of Congress, you could actually watch the federal government run out of money because the Jefferson building in 1897, beautiful, it's ornate, it's got that giant reading room in it. And that's the one you go into now. You're not going to see a lot of books. It's more like a museum. So when you go in, you take pictures. Hey, look, I saw a few displays, and that was, I went to the Library of Congress. It's not really where a lot of the work is done. The work is often done in the Adams building, which was, a marble structure built in 1939. It's a little bit decorative, but more of an office space. Looks more like kind of a traditional library inside. And then where I worked was the Madison building that was built in 1980, which is just a giant concrete bunker. So that's why they always joked you could watch the government run out of money looking at the Library of Congress. Now, the cool thing about the Madison building is that's really where most of the work happens. So this building is 2.1 million square feet. It's one of the largest buildings in DC. It is the largest library structure in the world. And so that's where I started. That's where I worked when I was there. I worked in the manuscript division. This building, this top floor here, was actually a cafeteria. So that was kind of cool. You could eat up there. And then everything in there's offices to all kinds, acres and acres and acres of holdings that I want to talk about that we had. So manuscript division. What was I doing when I was working there? So does anybody know what a manuscript is? Yeah, so manuscript is anything that was not published into a book. So it's basically loose paper, especially of like if you're writing in a journal or if you're keeping your notes, anything that's on loose paper that was never published into a book is considered a manuscript. So the manuscript division of the Library of Congress holds 12,000 discrete collections of the most prominent Americans ever. So if you think of any prominent American that's coming to your mind right now, we had all of their papers. It was all viewable to the public, and that's what we were doing. Talk a little bit about that collection, but 65 million items made up those 12,000 collections. So that's like pieces of paper and acres and acres and acres of these archival boxes that house these papers. So some of the coolest stuff. I always tell people, like, this was the only place I ever worked where the fire policy was not just get out of the building. It was go here, get these things, then get out of the building. And so, I mean, because we had what they called a core collection. These were documents that the researchers who were getting paid a lot more than I was determined were the most foundational documents to the country's history. Every time I say that, somebody's like, well, aren't they in a fireproof cabinet? Yes, of course, but the thing that's more fireproof than a fireproof cabinet is not being in a fire. So, it's a 2 million square foot building. So if there's a fire on one end, go get this stuff and then get out. And then it doesn't have to be in the fire. We would practice this. We actually practiced getting these documents out of these cases and leaving the building. So a couple of these, this to the left, you can't see the bottom. That is Washington's inaugural address. So we had that. These are just three of my favorites. We had like acres and acres of this. The middle is Alexander Graham Bell's original drawing of the telephone. And then all the way on your right is the Wright brothers telegraph that basically says, hey, this flight in Kitty Hawk worked. And so that was all part of, these are all documents that I've handled and documents that we had in the manuscript division. So who else was involved? These are just a few of like my favorites I remember working with. It wasn't just political people. Anybody who had any significance to American culture, to American history. It could be an athlete, a celebrity, a politician. We had all of and the collection continues to grow. We had most presidents. Some presidents would choose to keep their papers in their own library, like the William McKinley Presidential Library. Coincidentally, McKinley was not one of them. We did have his papers. But Abraham Lincoln, Robert Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was a fascinating one. We get people studying him regularly. Clara Barton, Frederick Douglass. One of my favorites was Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey was a Major League Baseball agent who brought Jackie Robinson in and broke the color barrier. We had all of his papers. I mean, so any foundational person to American history we had. So I want to talk about what this looked like, because so the cool thing is all these papers are available to you as an American citizen, which I thought was fascinating that they would let you come in and touch these things. So like if you come into the library, you're going to enter a room like this. You have to pass through security. They don't let you bring any bags in. You can't have a coat. But you're going to come in and you're going to talk to the librarian. This is Lewis. His name is actually Lewis. I work with him. And you're going to say, hey, I'm here to study this. Most of the people were there to either write a book or finish their dissertation. And we were busy. I mean, you can see that room is pretty full. Some folks would come in just because they're like, hey, I loved Rosa Parks was a major figure in my life. I want to read some of her primary stuff. That definitely happened, and you're absolutely allowed to do it. So what would happen is you would go and you would talk to Lewis at the front desk. He would sit you down, and they would give you what's called a finding aid. So a finding aid looks like this. So there were teams of librarians that when we would get these collections that would actually catalog them and file them like this. So this is Branch Rickey's. Again, I love this story. So it would say Branch Rickey's correspondences are in box 3 through 32, and then it would file all of his people that he was corresponding with. The librarian who put it together realizes that most people are going to be interested in Jackie Robinson, and so they call that out, and they actually have a specific box for all of Branch Rickey's correspondence with Jackie Robinson. So you as a researcher are going to fill out a card, and you're going to say, hey, I want boxes 24 through 27. You can only get like 4 boxes at a time. And that's going to have all the Jackie Robinson stuff in it. So the librarian's going to take that from you, and they're going to walk back through this door right here, take a card, and you'd scan in a clearance badge to be able to go and access this part of the collection. And that is very small. This collection was acres and acres and acres of these boxes. And so we would often tell people, hey, that's in section, I don't remember the number, section 4. This is going to be about 15 minutes for me to walk there and get that for you. So you would walk back, grab the stuff they want, find the Branch Rickey collection, grab the boxes they requested, and then take them back out to them. And then, of course, when they were done, they would request more. You'd go put them back, bring them more, okay? So I think the coolest thing about this is you don't need a reason to see any of this stuff. And it's totally available to you. Any American citizen, you don't have to pass a security clearance. Now, there was some stuff that was classified. So, not all of Robert Oppenheimer's papers would be available, right? So I did give out classified documents one time. My boss caught it pretty quickly. They had red tags on them. And so you would, I accidentally gave them out. Now, some of these restrictions would just be like the family saying, hey, we want this person to be dead for 50 years before you give out these years. That's what I did. No atom bomb stuff went to Russians or something because of me. So there was then another level of clearance that I didn't have that you could go into like even more specialized stuff. I wanted to share some of like my favorite things that I got to handle when I was there. Babe Ruth didn't have like a lot of papers. He didn't write a lot of stuff down. So there's not a lot of Babe Ruth signatures out there. So we had Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s paperwork. So not TR, but this. We did have TR's paperwork too. There was a letter from Babe Ruth to Teddy Roosevelt Jr. declining an invitation to a party, and then it was signed by Babe Ruth. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. I loved that. I was fanatical about baseball. I mean, it was awesome. So anytime that I would get a researcher in who was doing any kind of sports research, I would say, hey, I want you to request Teddy Roosevelt Jr., box 92. I still remember the box. And they were like, why? Like, it has nothing to do with what you're doing, but you're going to be happy you did it. And so I would pull it out, and it was the best reaction. Because, you would have this person is fanatical. They're here to write a book about sports. And you would go, hey, you ever seen a Babe Ruth signature? No? Ha ha! And they get the phones out and stuff. I mean, it was awesome. So that was like probably my favorite hidden gem that I would show people. Teddy Roosevelt Sr. was one of my favorite people to read, because when we were at lunch or whatever, not with food, you can't eat while you're doing this, we were allowed to read any of the primary sources that we wanted to. I read a lot of TR's journals. He wrote a lot extensively about big game hunting in Africa in the late 1800s. It's fascinating. Robert Oppenheimer wrote a lot about, yes, he's saving American lives by weaponizing science, but it's also, this technology is going to kill thousands of people. That's a weird place to be. This was one of the coolest things. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I was walking by one of our Civil War researchers, and she was like, hey, Brock, come here. And I was like, what's this? She's like, look what we just got. This was one of the first Congressional Medals of Honor given to one of the Civil War soldiers. So I got to hold that, which was really, really cool. Down at the bottom, this one I loved. All the other librarians hated dealing with this. Pinkerton's National Detective Agency. Do you guys know what this is? So the Pinkertons were like the first private eye. Like if you wanted to solve a mystery, or they were like the original sleuthing kind of thing, right? Still around today. You could still hire a Pinkerton if you want, but in their height, they were sort of infiltrating pieces of the Confederacy during the Civil War, and then they allegedly stopped a assassination attempt of Abraham Lincoln, like allegedly. It was just neat stuff. I mean, they were doing all kinds of crazy things. The logo alone makes me nervous. Like their logo is "We Never Sleep." There's veins popping out of the logo. It's like that watching eye. So the best thing about this Pinkerton's files were that people would want to know like these cases that were well over 100 years old. But most of Pinkerton's files caught fire in Chicago. And there was like all this mystery around what actually happened to that paperwork. And it was cool. All the other librarians were like, I hate dealing with Pinkerton stuff, because you would get this researcher who had this gaping hole, and they'd come from, sometimes a lot of this stuff is available online. In fact, they want you to use online because that's less touching of the documents, etc. But they would drive to DC, and we did a lot of exchanging of information over like instant messenger. But sometimes people would show up because they knew we had Pinkerton files, and they would drove from, Massachusetts or Indiana or something, and hey, we don't have like 30 years of their paperwork. So that always really sucked whenever they found that out. They should have read the website a little bit better. So those were just some of my favorites. Of course, we did have some famous researchers who used, because if you're doing primary source research on any prominent American, you have to use the Library of Congress. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So Edmund Morris, I actually have several of his books here. He was Ronald Reagan's personal biographer. And then he was using the Library of Congress pretty regularly when he was finishing Colonel Roosevelt, which was the third book in his Roosevelt series. So you can see Edmund Morris sitting with Ronald Reagan there. I think he passed away in 2019, but he was a regular user of the Library of Congress. And then this is Cokie Roberts. Does anybody remember Cokie Roberts? So I got to help Cokie Roberts with a microfilm machine. That was really cool. So she was in doing First Lady research, and she couldn't get the microfilm to like get into the machine correctly. I didn't know who she was at the time. I found out later. So I was just like, I'll help you do that. Super nice lady. But she was in doing research on that. So it was a great experience. I haven't talked about this in a long time, so I'm a little bit rusty. But yeah, that was it. Lindsay and I ended up getting married, if you want the end of that story. So we dated while we were in DC. I kind of left that one on a cliffhanger there. So Lindsay interned with the Speaker of the House at the time, was John Boehner. So she had a political science background, so they put her in his office. She said he smoked like a chimney in the Capitol building all the time. So it was a cool experience, but she couldn't stand being in meetings with him because she didn't like the smoke inside. But if you remember John Boehner. Yeah, Mark.
Are manuscripts copyrighted?
Like, what do you mean? Like, can you take a picture of it?
Right. Can I use somebody else's manuscript, or do I have to follow copyright laws?
No, it's public. So so what typically happens, like prominent presidents and so forth is a different thing, but like mostly what happens is when a person dies, like I'm trying to think of a more recent one that we got while I was there. I can't think. Let's say, okay, Michael Jackson dies. Like most of his manuscripts are going to go to his family. The family's going to be like, what do we do with these? So they give them to the Library of Congress. And so then once it's given to the Library of Congress, it's in the public domain. But the family is allowed to put any restriction on it that they want. So like a lot of people, what would happen, the NAACP has all of their archive at the Library of Congress. Many organizations do. But I recall them because they had very, very specific guidelines about what would come available during what years. And so once it's available, it's in the public domain.
So that leads to my next question. Is my wife able to donate all my papers to the library now?
Yeah, no. So I'm glad you asked that though, because
I have a lot of old board notes that
yeah, everybody's curious. No, so you have to. They actively seek these folks out. They know who they want. But one of the things that I thought was really cool. Does anybody ever heard of the Fighting McCook family?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm from Carrollton. The Fighting McCooks, all of their paperwork, there was 14 of them. They were brothers, sons, nephews, all fought in the Civil War. Most of them held very high offices and then went on to be governors, mayors. A couple of them did die in the war. All from Carrollton. Their papers are at the Library of Congress. So for me, that was kind of an emotional thing to see, like, people from Carroll County were in the same institution as Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and that was pretty cool.
Social media stuff.
What about? So yeah, Library of Congress when I was working there, bought the Twitter archive, but I don't know what they do with it. So I worked only in and I was like the lowest low position there. We only had manuscripts, so that was written paper, but the Library of Congress does own some social media archive type things, but I don't know how they do it or where it's held. I don't know any of that.
Is it an easy website to use?
Yeah, I mean, if you are interested, so you can go onto the Library of Congress website. You can pull up a lot of these documents. Now, not all of them. So there are teams of librarians that work every day to catalog these documents. And then there are teams of librarians that work to digitize these documents. But when I say acres and acres and acres and acres and acres, I'm probably underestimating the amount of things. Like, it's just not all accessible online yet. And it probably never will be. Yeah.
Was Nicolas Cage's?
It felt like that sometimes, yeah.
Was it like that with the Declaration of Independence?
So that's National Archives. We just like those, the National Archives guys.
Yeah.
So no. So someone asked me, did you ask me that? Somebody asked me that, like what the difference was. So National Archives are going to have like all of the big prominent documents, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, that kind of stuff. But like the manuscripts, the people who wrote the Declaration, we would have all of their papers, but not the actual Declaration. Anybody have anything else?
Thank you, Brock. A couple of quick things. If you would like a brochure or 17 of the amphitheater, please take some home. I have plenty. Next Wednesday night, there is no Louisville Rotary Club formal meeting. It's the 5th Wednesday of the month. If you would like to have some Rotary fellowship, Gervasi's is having a car show, of which Denny and I think Shorty are both going to have their cars over there. It is sponsored by the Salem Rotary Group, and it is a official district Rotary meeting. So they're not really a meeting, but it's a fellowship more than anything else. It's from 5 o'clock until 8 o'clock. You're on your own for food. There's nothing to do as far as Louisville Rotary formally next Wednesday. Does that make sense? Everybody clear on that?
No noon meeting.
No noon meeting. There is no meeting next Wednesday.
Okay, social.
Social. It's the 5th Wednesday of the month. Okay? Good. Jared, you won, right? If he pulls out the clear marble, he's a rich man. Well, good try anyway. Anything else for the good of the club? Going once, going twice. Thank you.